Dr. Parikh, Mr. Dr. Pramod Deo, Mr. Razdan, and my colleague and friend Girish Pradhan, ladies and gentlemen. We are already, as Dr. Parikh said, an hour late. I don't know whether we can combine the two sessions, but I would first of all talk only about the first part. And as Mr. Razdan said, that he would leave the coal for the time being, and leave it to me to talk about it. First of all, talk about the regulator proposal. The government had announced some time ago, in the the budget speech of the previous year, that there would be a coal regulator. A draft bill for the same was prepared, and it has been discussed extensively with the Law Ministry. It is yet to take a final shape. Essentially, what are we looking at from the regulator's office? I think the most critical part is pricing. The others, like regulating the mining issue, the safeties, all that may perhaps be added, as long as it doesn't interfere and overlap with existing laws and various other bodies that are there for those laws. And I think somebody very correctly said that pricing, while government says that we have no role in it, and it is the coal companies that determine the price, as the coal has been taken out of the Essential Commodities Act, the fact remains that there is a consultative process, and there is a certain amount of influence of the government and particularly of the user sectors on determining the price. But at the same time, if you just look back at the history of pricing in coal, prior to 2000, since it was directly as a part of Essential Commodities Act, there was a control order and the government had full authority on pricing. This situation has changed. And over the last 10 years, Coal India has revised coal pricing, I think 5 times. On 4 occasions, it was purely on the basis of the wage increase, the impact of wage increase that was there. On the last occasion, it was slightly different. It was not entirely wage increase, but there were other costs. But the last price revision had another factor, and that was the cue was drawn from the Planning Commission's advice on trying to relate some of the pricing to the markets. While it did hit a few sectors very, very severely, the A and B grade coal pricing was linked with the international price indexes. Planning Commission at some stage had indicated that this could be linked with some degree of discount. Whether that has really truly worked is still a matter which I think needs a little bit of inspection and examination, because we've had many people who are using this commodity for various sectors. In case of power, it probably impacted the outcome in terms of production, in terms of cost of power. In case of cement and few other users, it did impact the final product. But then it all depended how much actually coal constituted, or the fuel constituted, in the actual cost of production. As far as other grades of coal was concerned, there was a slight increase in price for non-power. Of course, non-power was slightly redefined again as utilities and CPPs. The idea was to try and bring up the price for other sectors to the level which has been put as a floor price for e-auctions. So there was a kind of an attempt to move towards some kind of market-driven pricing, but not entirely. The question is that how do we move this forward and come about with a more better method or policy or I would say a formula for pricing. Maybe that would be the most challenging part for a regulator, which is he is in position. There's another issue that the regulator needs to look at, and I think while the integrated energy policy talks of trying to resolve the tariff pricing through long-term fuel supply agreements, the fact remains that the fuel supply agreements themselves contain a clause that allows price variation. So I don't know whether it really is going to impact, unless and until we are quite sure how the cost of production is going to remain for a long period of time. I think for the last couple of years, I shouldn't criticize, but I think what has been coming out from the private sector and one of the larger investors or big companies in this country is a bit of uncertainty in what kind of stipulations or rules or laws may be brought in which may directly impact pricing. Now, just to give you one little example, the new Land Acquisition Act, it is going to impact future projects. Now, if it's going to impact future projects, it may be difficult to predict at this stage what its impact immediately would be on the pricing of coal that would be produced from projects that may come up, say, 5 or 6 years hence, which will produce coal 5 or 6 years hence. Because today is time when we will start acquiring land for those projects. Projects may have to be modified. Another one which has, a lot of it has been written and spoken about is the rising cost of I would say, CSR, while from government and even from the coal companies, we view this not as really a cost, but as an enabling mechanism by which you can actually get the community more to your side and make this industry far more friendly with the affected population. But at the same time, when we bring in a stipulation of sharing of 26% profit after tax, this is certainly going to impact pricing once again. So these are, now we do not know 5 years or 6 years hence whether we're going to have another law that brings in certain other costs. So to my mind, this issue of pricing needs a regulator who will have to give some kind of confidence to the industry that despite whatever rules, laws, or whatever new aspects are brought in, there is a degree of leveling which would reduce immediate impacts. Now, this could be viewed very critically through an economic angle by saying that this would actually mean subsidies or kind of some indirect or direct ways of subsidizing, which in turn is actually the bane of a lot of inefficiency. So leave everything to market may also not be the right process. That much as far as the present regulator I would talk about. I would briefly like to touch upon coal mining because I think I wouldn't say that it's a kind of a whipping horse that you keep on saying that we need more coal, we need more coal. Yes, we certainly need more coal. but there are restrictions and there are limitations to which these expansions can take place in a limited time frame. Coal continues to be, rightly or wrongly, under the nationalized sector, in which selling coal commercially is limited to the government sector, which is the government companies are selling it. It's still, a bill was moved to amend the Nationalization Act, but that has still not fructified. And it has been left to a stage where there will be some level of political consensus when the proposal will be moved in Parliament. Mining as such is generally not very easily understood when we look at particularly, I would say, when we have so many restrictions imposed to the environment and forest regulations. It's not easy to say that you put in new technology and you can increase output. If you want to increase output, you can certainly bring in mechanization, but that again requires a certain process to go through. It's not a simple induction of machinery to increase production. We find that if we have to increase production, say in a mine from 1 million to 1.5 million tons, you have to go through a whole lot of process of approvals, particularly from the environment point of view. And the processes are very tardy. Any expansion, any increase in capacity would again necessarily require environment clearances, public hearings, various processes, and that takes a lot of time. We do struggle with the Environment Ministry trying to get certain bypassing or relaxation in these areas, but so far not very successful. Second thing I would like to talk about is that, third thing, is that coal in India is not a very high-grade coal. That is the ones that is used for the thermal or the power sector. It contains a lot of ash. And it is perhaps a little fashionable to see that if I need 100 million tons, I am having 60 million tons at home. Can I just simply import 40 and make up? I just want to say, sir, it's not a one-to-one substitution. There are many limitations. If you want to use coal, you have to know how much you can absorb in the plant that you have. And that sets the limitation as to the extent of your import. And when we say that there is a gap of 137 million tons of coal, I'm not very sure whether 137 million tons can be absorbed. If the present kind of machinery and the boilers and the plants that you have, that is a limiting factor. And I think the power, last time I heard the Power Secretary says, it's a not one-to-one substitution. We should have a clear idea of the availability of coal at present and maybe for the next 5 years, and that will determine to a very great degree as to what actually can be imported. I would say that leads to another thing in the power sector which I am not really qualified to speak, but that really means increasing efficiencies. How are you going to change that so that these mixes of imported coal and domestic can be such that you don't have a very large part of power installations lying idle? I think I would like to stop here because there are 2 more speakers, and if I have to stay on for the next session briefly, then I will talk about coal production. Thank you.